So I'm the Forest Program Manager. I'm going to give you an update of the achievements. I've been in this position for 1 year, well, 1 year and 7 days. So last year, when I started with the Forest Program, I established sort of 8 projects that sort of run at the same time. Georgia's, I'm not going to go through this whole list because I'm going to mention them individually. But Georgia did mention the polyphagous shottle borer, or the PSHB, or just shottle borer beetle. That's one of the main projects that we have at the moment. It's quite a big problem. There seems to be a recent flare-up. We have 14 cases within the valley, and the tree species that they love the most is seemingly English oak. So I think we've got like 2 English oaks left in Nature's Valley, which is ecologically maybe not a bad thing, but if you think of trees as heritage, or people maybe have a sort of an association with the tree, maybe grandpa planted the tree, then it can be quite sad. But it becomes a problem when we start seeing indigenous trees being attacked. So far, the 5 native trees that I've mentioned is saffron, Cape Holly, which was very recent, like 4 weeks ago in Forest Drive, and then Cape Ash, which was one of the first ones that we had, a bladder nut, and then a coral tree. Now, coral tree is indigenous to South Africa, not really indigenous to Nature's Valley, but that was as recent as last week when me and Georgia came across this coral tree. And we're very reliant on people reporting this to us. So I'm going to put my email up at the end of the slideshow, but I think everyone knows where to get hold of NVT, so please let us know if you see a tree that might be a bit diseased. There are many signs to look out for: a bunch of holes in the tree, there's frass coming out of the tree, there might be gum exuding from the stem of the tree. So almost every species has different signs of the shottle borer. But if you think it might be that, we come out. We recently acquired a microscope, so we can confirm in-house within a matter of hours, is it shottle borer or not. If we are unsure, what we do is we develop this trapping method, which is quite novel for South Africa actually. So this is an NVT first, where we cover the infected area of the tree, and there's only one escape, which is this plastic bottle, which is then filled up with ethanol and propylene glycol as a preservative. And then the beetles basically, they're attracted to the ethanol, but it's also, because it's dark, there's only one light source, and then they go to that, and then we can just under the microscope confirm or not. So that's the one project. Unfortunately, we have limited time, so I can't go into a lot of detail, but that's just broadly the shottle borer project. Then the other big project, I see John Wilson arrived. So I manage Hebron Private Nature Reserve for him, which is a 14-hectare indigenous forest behind Nature's Way farm store. And one of the big projects was to rehabilitate his forest edge back to a functioning ecotone. When I got there, it was invasive species for the most part, and it was what we call in forest ecology a hard edge. So there's a lot of microclimatic, how can I say, unnatural abiotic conditions along these edges, because it's a transformed natural edge, and the natural matrix has moved away from a fynbos mosaic towards a dairy and a pasture and invasive species. So what we're trying to do is rehabilitate the ecotone back to a functioning ecosystem. So we have 16 plots all along the edge. We do 4 different treatments, because forest rehabilitation in South Africa is really an underdeveloped field. You know, it's a small biome, there's really no one working on it. So we're doing different treatments to see what works best. But this is a photo taken in July last year, just after we planted. And this is exactly, so look at the tree in the background. This is exactly the same spot in March. So, I mean, this is 9 months, and we've already seen massive progress, so I'm super happy about this. And I mean, some of the trees are even starting to flower now, and there's insect diversity coming back, so it's really, really beautiful. In terms of the treatments, in a quarter of the plots we only planted trees. In a quarter of the plots, we planted trees, and we added kooigoed or helichrysum. In In the third quarter, we also sowed seeds of indigenous trees, and then in the fourth quarter, we did everything together. So what we found, we monitor insect diversity monthly, and you can quite clearly see these are averages over 9 months, that the plots that received trees planted with seeds being sown and Helichrysum or kooigoed being added has way more insect diversity. So insects are crucial to any ecosystem. It's not necessarily the more the better, but generally speaking, the more insects you have, the healthier the ecosystem is. So that's abundance in green and species richness in blue. We also measured the tree height, because you know, the faster the better, I guess, we get these plots rehabilitated. And what we see is that the plots in which kooigoed were added, all seeds were sown, on average, also the trees that we planted are actually taller. So there's you know, many people argued before I started these treatments that Helichrysum or kooigoed will smother out the trees that we plant, so it will be to the detriment of forest rehabilitation. But I was skeptical, and I was able to sort of prove them wrong, in that if you add kooigoed, which is a plant that really covers a plot quickly, it actually stimulates the trees to grow quicker, and it sort of pushes them upwards. So that's quite positive, and that's a very novel result. A massive undertaking was just the vegetation monitoring in Hebron to see what's in the forest. So we had 5 plots, those yellow dots. 2,000 square meters were covered, when each tree species were measured and GPS tagged, and drone footage was taken. In the whole Hebron Private Nature Reserve, which is a beautiful reserve, I encourage you to visit it, there's 47 tree species. Many of you will know we recently went through a drought, and surprisingly the forest was very resilient to this drought, but stinkwood and kamasi, stinkwood being an endangered tree species, was quite severely affected, but they've since recovered. I'm going to touch on stinkwood now, because we did a separate project on that. This is just interesting. The largest specimens in Hebron Private Nature Reserve were red pear, ironwood, and real yellowwood, but the dominant tree species, yellowwood, saffron, and ironwood. There were some species that showed poor recruitment, which were assegai, candlewood, false silky bark, and white pear. So these are species we want to look more closely into. Why? What's the reason for poor recruitment? We see there's canopy, or there's individuals in the canopy as mature trees, but you don't really see a bunch of seedlings. So that obviously has implications for the future. But just interesting, the extrapolated data suggests that there might be about 20,000 individual mature trees in Hebron Private Nature Reserve, which is quite a lot of trees. Then I'm not sure where I'm now. 4th project is the camera trap deployment, which we have in the reserve. There's 6 camera traps. The flagship species, I guess, would be bushbuck. We see it on a daily basis. But then bush pig, porcupine, genet, mongoose, caracal, and honey badger we also see quite often. We know blue duiker and leopard is in the area. I know Lauren got blue duiker in the dunes here in Nature's Valley. So in the broader landscape, they are here. We also did a leopard study last year. The leopards are also around. We haven't gotten them yet in Hebron, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time. And at the moment, we're dealing with feral dogs as well in Hebron, but the problem seems to be dealt with. These are dogs that don't have any humans that accompany them, and they essentially pose a risk to our native fauna. Then a massive project is the alien invasive clearing of Hebron Private Nature Reserve. So I mentioned the edge. The edge is quite invaded, and the 2 main culprits is wandering dews and Madeira vine, and these are ground creepers and climbers, and it's really, really hard work, and it's a constant. So we're doing different methods. At the moment we have 11 hotspots along the eastern edge where we have these thick plastic sails. We remove them by hand, we put them in the sails, we treat it with herbicide, and then we close it up so it doesn't leach into the system. And one thing I'll mention later is we want to improve our monitoring efforts, because I think we've just been, I've just like ran into a wall here without really doing good monitoring. So I want to really improve the monitoring that I'm doing here, maybe weighing the biomass and see if it decreases over time, it's difficult to do fixed point photos with these invasives because it's ground creepers, so it's not really easy. But Australian blackwood, black wattle, and bugweed has been suppressed for the most part. There's very little left, if any, especially blackwood and black wattle. Bugweed is a recurring problem, but it's also under control, so it's a constant removal process. Another project was the Arboretum at Hebron. It's the first of its kind in Africa. So if you really want to learn more about your trees, it's a very wheelchair-friendly boardwalk that we have, and it's very interactive. So we have 75 indigenous trees to the Southern Cape. There's information plaques, so you can see the trees, you can read more about it on the plaque, and it's sort of a virtual book almost, where you can learn more about your indigenous trees. Another project was the Phil Martin Nursery. To everyone that donated wood, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. For this whole greenhouse that we built, and this is where we do seed germinations, to expand our nursery, 90% of the wood here was donated by valley owners, old wood that was discarded. This door came from Umrian in Forest Drive, so thank you for that. We basically bought the shade netting. So, yeah, our stock has quadrupled in the past year, and it's not just for selling. We also use these trees in forest rehabilitation efforts in the broader landscape. So it's sort of a dual-purpose nursery, but you're more than welcome to visit the nursery and buy from us as well. Good prices and good stock. And I'm open to barter, you know, if I say 30 Rand, you know, 25 Rand. And then lastly in the valley, with Georgia, what we often do is if owners ask us, we go out to their yards or their properties and we identify the trees for them. We give tree advice if there's sick trees, not necessarily always shot or borer. Quite a few landowners have asked me to identify their trees and order tree tags for them and put them up. And this we do through the Dendrological Society, so it's those beautiful tree tags. So you're more than welcome to contact us if you want something like that done, or if you have a question about trees. And then the main focus of the forest program is actually the research, or the aspect that I enjoy most, I'd say. So we've done research on leopards, dung beetles, tree ferns, Strelitzia alba, which is a narrow-range endemic species. I'm just going to quickly touch on some of these projects. One of the big ones last year was the stinkwood survey that we did for Hebron Private Nature Reserve. We counted in 14 hectares, 314 trees. So this was a lot of, as they say, bundu bashing. And the image on the right, the red dots, those are the large, mature specimens. Something very interesting that we found is that the largest specimens had a diameter of 29 centimeters. And this is large in relative terms for Hebron, but it's actually very small if you think of Diepvalle and Eisner, like reference forests in the landscape. Some of these trees can have a diameter of over 100 centimeters. So it really, well, not really. It predictably points towards past harvesting in Hebron. Stinkwood having valuable timber. Currently it's an endangered species. I mean, they built ships with the timber from stinkwood. The stats are astonishing. I've got some literature if you're interested to know how many stinkwoods were taken out of the Southern Cape forest, but it's a lot. And this graph is very interesting. So number of individuals in size category, we see that we've got a lot of saplings in Hebron. We've got a few large trees, and we've got very few seedlings. So this is a classic example of that delayed bottleneck. If you remove the reproductive individuals, the large trees, because stinkwood only starts flowering once it's reached the canopy, and that takes decades, if not hundreds of years. They're very slow growing. So if you remove the reproductive individuals from the forest, it's going to take many years, many decades for the saplings and the seedlings to reach that reproductive stage again. And this might be why we only found 2 seedlings in the whole forest. And those 2 seedlings were exactly in that hotspot of large trees. My time is up, but we also did a study on dung beetles. We found 9 species. We compared dung beetle diversity between dense 30-year-old fynbos and burnt fynbos and forest as 3 successional stages. And the highest diversity was in burnt fynbos, but the highest abundance was in dense fynbos. So it sort of shows us that, you know, in a landscape like this, in a natural landscape, pre, you know, human settlement in large parts, you would have a mosaic of burnt fynbos, dense fynbos, forest, and these would basically house or hold different dung beetle species and dung beetle diversities. So that was quite interesting, but it's going to form part of the journal that Henry spoke about. Wrote a review article on evergreen forests, so if anyone wants to read that, I'm happy to share that with you. The main research project that I'm currently working on is documenting the insects that associate with fruit and seeds of indigenous tree species. And through this, we were able to get funding to finally get a microscope for NVT. So we can use this microscope for many other things now as well, like shottle borer, for example. And just something cool that I wanted to share with you. This is a moth species that is completely new to science that we discovered. We actually discovered one in Hebron. It associates with a tree that is called dogwood or glossy leaf, and it feeds on the seeds. You can only really see it through a microscope, but it almost has like a peacock wing feather there. I'm almost done. Many of you that really scour our forests will notice that our tree ferns has been looking quite bad in the past decade, and we are working on an article now to show we inspected over 900 tree ferns, and 60% of them were completely defoliated, so they look like that. And we're still unsure exactly why, but the one result that really came out was distance to stream. So the further you go from the stream, the higher the probability is that the tree fern will be defoliated. So we think it might be because of climate. And what to do about that, I don't know. But it is quite concerning. Not many of them are actually resprouting, so that is quite a big problem. I've said a lot, but current projects continue with Hebron. I'm doing a microclimate study now where we want to see, as the edge recovers, does the microclimate in the forest stabilize? There's definitely an edge effect there. We're working towards a canopy bird-eyed, which is quite exciting. Further expand Phil Martin nursery, alien invasive species, forest rehabilitation, not only on Hebron, but different landowners in the area. We're monitoring fire effects on forests, and then the intern projects that we currently have, as Giorgio mentioned, the bush pigs. We're looking at bird diversity in forest versus fynbos, and a very interesting project looking at mites on leaves, which no one has ever looked at in this part of the world. Then lastly, I just want to touch on the baboon project. I was asked to mention this, but Adrian is in the audience. But yeah, we also have a baboon project. Chakma baboons, we want to understand their role in the ecosystem. We study their behavior, their social structures, their movement patterns, and this is through in-field observations and also community engagement. And we really want to improve the relationship that we have with baboons in this area and not have it spiral out of control like we see in the Cape Peninsula. And then lastly, yeah, just the way forward, we have many plans in the pipeline. So thank you very much. And this is my email address if you